I'm Dr. Mary Tracy. I'm the Director of Northern California Neurotherapy. We've been in operation for about 6 years in Davis, California, and we provide diagnostic assessment and neurofeedback and biofeedback training for psychological, emotional, and brain trauma disorders, everything from depression, anxiety, and attention deficit disorder to more serious problems like traumatic brain injury.
My name is Kelly Nelson, and I am a licensed marriage family therapist. I am Mary Tracy's colleague. We work together, we teach together, we consult on cases together, we do training together. It's been really enjoyable to move into this area of work.
Like any conventional medical process, you have to start with a diagnosis before you can do a treatment. And our diagnostic assessment involves placing electrodes on the scalps of people's heads and recording brain activity. We record the brain activity and then we process it digitally with very sophisticated software that gives us an indication of dysregulation in the brain. We have these huge databases of so-called neurotypical brain activity. So we have a control group basically, and we statistically compare the patient's brain function to that of sometimes age-matched, sometimes just general population-matched neurotypical controls. Whenever we find something that flags high or low, those areas become targeted areas for treatment. And the treatment involves neurofeedback, which is a learning paradigm. We use videos, video games, and music as the media. And what we do is have someone sit in a very comfortable chair. We record brain activity from the dysregulated area of their brain. And the client's brain controls the variables in the video game or the video, for example. So let's say we're treating a child with attention deficit disorder, and the child has very slow activity in the frontal parts of the brain, which is what causes distractibility, inattentiveness, inability to focus. And we record that activity, and whenever the brain spontaneously produces a faster rhythm, which is associated with interest in the video game or interest in the video screen becomes very large. As soon as the kid goes into the slower ADD activity, the video screen shrinks down. So we have a positive reward and a negative reward. And of course, the brain wants to keep the screen big. So what it learns to do very, very quickly, even before the patient really understands what's going on, is it starts to produce more of that faster activity. And we know that if it keeps producing that faster activity, neurons that fire together wire together. That's the basis of neuroplasticity in the brain. And so what you come up with at the end of a 30 or 40-minute session is a communication network in the brain that's much more efficiently wired for attention, focus, and control. And as you reward this on a weekly basis over 8 to 10 sessions or so, you can actually rewire the brain, and I'm using air quotes here because we don't have actual physical evidence of that, and yet we know that kids will function much better with focus and attention. What we see is that this operant conditioning paradigm actually functions to help the person focus and to attend and to do better judgment, better control, better impulse control over time. And so the operant conditioning paradigm utilizes the fact that this brain can produce activity that is consistent with focus and attention, and we reward that every single time it happens with the neurofeedback training. So the first thing we start with is a 30-minute free consult, and during that consult we will do a clinical history. We will document, sometimes with an assessment questionnaire and always with a clinical interview, everything that the person is suffering from, what their complaints are, what kinds of deficiencies they're noticing in personal, work, and social environments. And then what we'll do is create a list of symptoms and we will make an appointment for a brain assessment. We have two different kinds of assessments. One of them is called a mini Q. Q stands for quantitative. So this is a quantitative EEG. The mini Q uses 5 electrodes on the surface of the scalp to record brain activity from 5 different locations. And it's a cognitive, social, behavioral assessment. And we sit down with the patient and we discuss the possibilities of their symptoms matching what we found in terms of dysregulated areas of brain function. When we get matches, those become targeted areas for treatment. So for example, we may have a patient who's been suffering from depression, has a history of depressive symptoms. And not always, but very often, we'll find dysregulated activity in the left frontal cortex. When we see that and the patient says, yeah, I've been depressed, we can put an electrode there and we can reward a faster frequency which should be there. So for example, when people are depressed, they may have a frequency of like 8 to 12 cycles per second or slower in that region of the brain. That region of the brain is responsible for executive function, which usually demands a much higher frequency. So we may reward a frequency of 15 to 19 or 19 to 25 cycles per second. And the way we do that is when the person is engaged with the neurofeedback learning paradigm, and let's say they're watching the movie again, we will only let the movie screen be large when their brain spontaneously produces the faster rhythm. When their brain produces the slower rhythm that has been subserving the depressive symptoms, the screen shrinks down. So during a 30 or 40 minute session, you see the screen moving back and forth, and after just a few minutes, the patient's able to keep it in the larger aspect ratio for longer periods of time. So the brain learns very quickly to utilize that reward as a result of operant conditioning.